Hi, I'm Tom Marks with the Marks Law Firm in Orlando, Florida, and welcome to the Healthy Family Law Attorney. I believe your family matters, and so I want to provide hope and help to your family to successfully navigate the family law process in a healthy way. And today I have a special guest, somebody I've known for a lot of years, Eddy Moratin. Eddy is the president of Lift Orlando, a movement of business leaders working with residents and community partners toward neighborhood revitalization since 2013. This collaborative approach, and I love that word, that phrase, collaborative, because I really love collaborative law, but Eddy works collaboratively to decrease childhood poverty and increase financial mobility for families in the heart of Orlando. So his organization strengthens neighborhoods by building high quality mixed income housing and providing cradle to career educational pipeline opportunities within the community for health and wellness, creating economic opportunity for residents. So Eddy was the executive director of Lifework leadership in Orlando prior to getting involved and becoming the president of Lift Orlando. I have to say, Eddy is the author of an upcoming book, The Joy of Justice, scheduled to come out this summer. So maybe Eddy can talk to us a little bit about it. I just have to brag a little bit more about him. Eddy was awarded the 2019 CEO of the Year award by the Orlando Business Journal and was listed as one of the 50 most powerful philanthropic and community voices in 2018. So Eddy, welcome aboard and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. It is great to be with you, man, and really wonderful to be able to share this platform with you as you gather people on this topic. It's what you describe has been one of the greatest rides of my life, really, to see a community come together around a compelling vision for its future to not only overcome obstacles and setbacks of the past, but try to create generational cycles of prosperity for children and generations to come. We say our vision is a neighborhood where children grow up with hope and return with joy. To me, it's a great privilege. We grew up in dire circumstances at one season or another, but also experienced times of prosperity through entrepreneurship and opportunity in my family journey. Today, a big part of getting to do this for me that fuels my commitment is watching business leaders find a redemptive purpose to their knowledge and influence to be able to benefit not just themselves, but those who may not be able to seek opportunity for themselves in our community. So it's a really fun and enjoyable ride.
Well, I love the fact that you seek to strengthen families in the community. So let's start off with, what do you do to work with your wife to strengthen your family on a regular or an annual basis?
Thank you. It is for us, the mission of Lift Orlando, though people think about us as bricks and mortar, is centered on the idea of the importance of providing families with a stable environment in order to thrive. The children can't learn year over year and succeed without the stability of a home and not just a roof over their heads, but a house that they can call home. And that means that mom and dad are experiencing opportunity. So most everything we do has a two-generation approach that engages children and their parents. And this has hit home for me in this role and for me and my family. I think for Giselle, my wife, and I, when we got married, we knew a lot of families that were going through very difficult situations, primarily marriages that were distraught, that were going through difficulty, many that were falling apart or living in miserable circumstances, either because of the dysfunction of their relationships or pain caused by one to another. But a lot of it had to do with people in many ways competing for attention, time, energy, resources, as opposed to being one. And so early on, it's funny, we'd not been married 6 months when we decided we'd coordinate a little DIY retreat for other young, recently married couples in our church community. And we called it To Be One, to become one was sort of the theme, because the metaphor that was driving our desire for success in marriage was that we wanted to be a dream team. We didn't want to be two people under the same roof trying to figure out how the other person is going to make me happy, but actually be committed to each other's fulfillment and growth and happiness through mutual sacrifice and love for each other. That it's not by trying to meet each other 50-50 or halfway, but by serving 100% of the way for the benefit of the other, that we build solid bridges in relationships. And so we every year try to do something. We get away to a retreat, we go to a seminar, a weekend, something that is programmatic and intentional for building marriages. And we do some intentional planning ourselves. I'm sure there's a lot of professionals who listen to or watch your program. And in business, we expect to have a plan, set goals, organize, strategize, and try to hit milestones in an intentional way. We don't just show up every day and hope that it'll be a great year. And so we believe in marriage and anything worthwhile, the same is true. So we spend some intentional time early in the year. We get away for 2 or 3 days. We spend the first day really reflecting on things that we're grateful for from the prior year, things that we would thank God for, that we know should be appreciated. The second day, we'll talk about goals and ambitions, desires for the new year, and maybe what partnering along those might require compromise or trade-offs as a team. And then we'll talk about how to manage our time, our money, and even our relationships, our relational commitments outside of our marriage. Which ones add life and energy to those goals, and which ones maybe need to be managed differently. So that's maybe more than you wanted to know, but a synopsis of some of the more intentional things we try to do, because great marriages don't happen by accident. They usually share in common intentional effort to be great.
Yeah, I think that's great, Eddie. I love to hear that. I mean, an annual getaway with your wife to actually intentionally invest in the marriage. I recently did a video on how to avoid divorce, and I talked about some of these things. And I'm going to tell you, I know it sounds a little counterintuitive that a family law attorney who does handle divorces would want families to be strong and marriages to be strong, and to help them avoid even walking into a family law attorney's office. But my worldview and my faith tell me that an intact family that's really working on the marriage and having a healthy marriage is best for the children and for the husband and wife. So I'm invested in trying to help clients do that. Even if a client walks in the door and says, I want a divorce, I'm going to explore the possibility of reconciliation, of forgiveness, of some really, biblical concepts to help that person, that family, not to walk back into an abusive situation or a harmful situation, but kind of like Einstein says, not doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I'm thrilled to hear that. Can you give us a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of the planning that you and your wife do, and tell us about your kids too, because I know you have a couple of kids there.
Thank you. And I love that about you, Tom. From the first time we met, your commitment to the well-being of your clients and loving them as people, and not just as clients, even if that means that they don't use your services because you've been able to help them re-enter in a healthy way. It says the world about you and your team, and I'm just proud to know you, man. We have 2 kids. My daughter's 11, my son is 9. I'm afraid to blink, they're growing so fast. But we do try to make sure that they see some real intentionality, that mom and dad love them, would give our lives for them. But mom and dad were here first, and we'll be here together when they're gone. And so we, from prioritizing our date nights, opportunities to get away throughout the year, and this weekend, we want them to see us model out. Somebody told us very early on that the best thing we could do for our kids' happiness and fulfillment in life is to invest in our own marriage. And we've seen a lot of folks kind of get that backwards, become so obsessed in trying to meet the needs of their children or keep their children happy, they would actually betray their marriage commitments by kind of getting those priorities out of order. And so when we do get away, I mentioned it's about a 3-day period. We will each take a journal with us. And so that first day, and usually this is not like a 3-day working retreat or anything. We'll most often go to the beach and we'll just relax and goof off mostly for 3 days. We just know every day that either over dinner or an afternoon snack or lunch, there's going to be a 1 to 2 hour period of intentional conversation about our marriage and this next year. And so it's not like it's not a huge workload or a packed agenda. There's just a couple of hours on each of these 3 days where the first day we're really looking back, kind of what we accomplished, what milestones were achieved, what things we are grateful for. And we'll each just write that down separately. We'll take some time alone. For me, oftentimes it's going to be a really long walk very early in the morning on the beach. We'll all spend a lot of time in reflection, and I'll come back and journal, and then we'll share that. And that's always so uplifting because we'll remember different things that we can appreciate together. The second day is when we do a little dreaming, again, individually first. We'll write down some goals, try to prioritize. We've gotten better and better at trying to keep that number of goals to a very limited, short list of top priority things we can actually commit to. And then we'll come together and discuss those. And sometimes we're right on, right? We've been doing life together, prioritizing things. We're dreaming about the same things. Sometimes one of us has a dream that is out of left field for the other one. And sometimes the dream of one may be in conflict with the dream of another. And this is where the metaphor of being one team really kicks in. It's impossible for one of us to win and the other one to lose if we're one team. The team either wins together or loses together. And so there's a commitment to find a way to win together. And sometimes we can't do certain things. Sometimes that needs to wait for another time. And it's a collective loss or a collective delay. But there's no, we never want to feel like we're unwillingly being put in a position to sacrifice out of obligation without common understanding and compassion and a sense that we're in this together. If one of us is making a sacrifice, which will often happen, to say, I want you to do that, I want you to accomplish that, I'm going to choose to not do this other thing so that I have time to support you in that. Or I'm going to wait so that we can do that now. And it happens either way. That should feel like we are both committing to the thing that we're doing together. It's a win we both celebrate, we both find satisfaction and joy in, even if technically it might fall on one person's, resume or set of accomplishments or goals. And then the last day, we realized that time is the one resource we cannot replace. And so much of it is looking at the calendar for the entire year. At the goals, whether it's trips or vacations or time away, time with the kids, particularly special developmental milestones with our kids, we want to spend some intentional time, whether that's, her, Giselle, and my daughter, or me and my son, and vice versa with each of them, trying to put this on the calendar months in advance, trying to put certain events and trips, vacations months in advance. And then your calendar will pack up as normal, but those spots are already protected. As opposed to trying to figure out mid-year how to steal some time to get away for this, that, and the other, and then it never happening. If you just block those spots, those weekends, those weeks very early in the year, you can make sure that they happen, that you keep your promises and commitments to that family time, or maybe it's your own time to get away. And then we look at money, we talk about budgeting, and we talk a lot about relationships. Is who are the people that maybe we want to spend more time with. We'll often draw concentric circles, like who's in our inner circle, who's in our kind of family, friends that are close, but maybe not that close, and who are folks that are kind of on the outer fringes of our time invested that we either want to spend more time with, or maybe they're okay just there. Not every relationship should be your best friend. And as couples, that's a little bit more complicated to figure out. And if you don't talk about it, you end up with unintended consequences. So that's a little bit more detail on what is entailed, but it's really meant to feel like a fun, relaxing getaway that you leave from feeling some peace of mind, that some things about the future, to the best that you can plan and control, have been resolved and decided and protected in each other's calendars and hearts.
Well, Eddy, I think you said some really powerful things there. A couple things that really spoke to me is that win-win perspective that you talked about. It's not a win-lose or a lose-lose, it's a win-win. And so that really commits you and Giselle to being connected and moving forward in the same direction. And you also talked about the concept of time And I know I've heard that children spell love Time.
That's right.
So they want you as their mom and dad to spend time with them. And you can tell them all day long you love them, but if you're not going to spend time with them, you're not going to plan that time, you're not going to make it happen, then they're going to feel left out. So I think those are some super important concepts. And I love the way that you guys are so intentional about doing that. And I know my wife
Try.
and I have done that too. And we've been married 34 years, so it's really helped our marriage. Our kids
That's
are
awesome.
grown now, yeah. But so I want to give you an opportunity to give just a little plug for your book, The Joy of Justice. Can you just tell us a little bit what it's going to be about?
Yeah, it really is about that feeling that you get when you stand up for someone else. There's a joy that comes from achievement when you work hard at something and you fight against all odds and you become something or achieve something that not only benefits you, benefits those you love. And that is so at the core of what the American dream is all about. This idea of a nation that provides space and enables the prosperity of its citizens through ownership, through growth, through entrepreneurship. I'm a big believer of free enterprise and individual responsibility. And America may very well be one of history's greatest inventions if measured by the number of people that have arrived here with nothing, that have created generational wealth for them and their families. But there's also a joy, and you and I both know people like this. You've never met, our friends at Generous Giving like to say, an unhappy generous person. Is that there are people who have found the joy of generosity, the idea of giving of themselves, even sacrificially, to a cause they care about, to the needs of other people. And it fuels such a sense of satisfaction and gratitude in life. But justice is one of these things that really enables such a sense of connection to our highest and best self. When we use what we've been given to stand in the gap for other people who may not have the same ability. And so the joy of justice is the story of the journey we've been on here in this community to really employ the networks, knowledge, experience, and resources in the hands of business leaders, community leaders, and folks who have the ability to advocate for others to stand in the gap and leverage those resources to see the right things happen for vulnerable communities. America offers great opportunities to its citizens, but we haven't been equal in how we've done that. At times, we've been selfish with the promise of the American dream, where only some communities and people were able to receive that, benefit from that, and pass it on to their children. At some stages of our history, we've been very separate, maybe not selfish, but we've kind of, hey, we'll prosper here, you prosper over there, but unequal investment, unequal access to opportunity has created downward cycles of poverty for many families in our country. This is about creating shared communities, communities where people prosper together, where basically the solution for chronic poverty, for communities left behind, for neighborhoods often in the shadow of prosperous downtowns that somehow economically are moving in the opposite direction as the community around them. What every community like that needs most is something really, really simple. In fact, it's the same thing you and I need most in life. It's a caring and connected neighbor. Extreme cases of poverty in our country and our urban environments exist because families have been cut off and isolated from the natural channels of opportunity. If you or I or any of our viewers lost their job today, the likelihood of your next job opportunity coming from your existing network of people you already know or someone they know is about 80%. It's how the world turns around. It's how opportunity works. It's through relationships. But if you are in a neighborhood of concentrated poverty and everyone you know is stuck in the same rut as you, and you lose your job, there are cases where it's more likely you might ask a stranger for money than you would consider that all you need is for someone to lend you their good name, to open a door of opportunity, to make an introduction. And so the intention of the book is to really see more people in the marketplace identify their opportunities, to be advocates for outsiders, for real estate developers to see redemptive purpose in their work and not give in to the sort of animal instincts of gentrification or development search merely for money. all the way to the neighborhood advocate and community organizer who's just trying to figure out how to create better opportunities for children and families who may not know how to advocate that for themselves. For us, for our board and our staff, this has been the ride of a lifetime and the most humbling privilege of our careers. And so the book is an attempt to just share some of the lessons learned and our journey in hopes of helping other communities embrace the same ideals. We'll see about $100 million of development come out of the ground, about $12 million of entrepreneurship and opportunities for local minority-owned businesses, 400 jobs in the area, and a reversal of per capita income per household from the year we started, where people are beginning to ascend economically at the same rate of the broader city, to join the middle class in increasing numbers. That's the goal. So not only break the cycle of poverty, as people say, but to really ignite a cycle of prosperity for current families and future generations. But it doesn't happen in isolation. It doesn't just happen by making good choices. It happens by all of us caring about all of us in the city.
Well, yeah, Eddie, and I know you see it all being so involved in the community. You see the impact of divorce or broken homes or single moms or grandparents raising children. I know that I do work with the Orange County Bar Association Legal Aid Program, and I do guardian work, like a guardianship by extended family member. And so I often see an African-American grandmother or grandfather raising a number of children, or actually grandchildren of their own children that may have disappeared. Maybe they're in jail, maybe they are on drugs, or they just don't know where they are. So I know you see that, and I'd love to hear your perspective on that impact on the African-American family and the kind of trouble in the family unit, and whether there's a father in the home, or what are the major concerns in the African-American family?
Oh, it's such a great point. You know, when we started, we realized that our community had thousands upon thousands. We have over 12,000 nonprofits and charities today. And yet, so many of us doing charitable work find ourselves addressing symptoms, feeding, clothing, housing, helping people in crisis. The problem is that 95% of our families receiving crisis support and relief are not in crisis. They're in chronic, long-term poverty and struggle, and things that are generations in the making that hold back them and their families. And so we started with the desire to really think upstream. The old adage about the group that goes to camp by the riverside, and just as they're setting up, one of them sees a baby coming down the river, jumps in the water to save the baby. And as soon as they make it to shore, someone sees another baby and they jump in the water. And this whole operation ensues to rescue babies from the river. And they're feeding the babies and clothing the babies and housing the babies and educating the babies and getting the babies adopted and paying for the college scholarships. And this massive industry develops out of rescuing babies from the river. And one day somebody starts to walk upstream and someone asks, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to go stop whoever's throwing these babies in the river." Like, I'm going to go upstream and stop this nonsense. And I think for us, it's very easy to kind of look at present circumstances and the number of choices being made by families in dire circumstances with very little support and shining examples that find themselves really at the tail end of a very long story of how we in many ways have systematically dismantled the Black family in America. I mean, in the 1950s, the two-parent Black household was greater in number than white two-parent households. The family unity was strong largely because of some of the oppression happening. And so when we kind of increase rates of arrest and incarceration, provide public subsidy that require the absence of the husband, I mean, you start stacking some of these issues, and they multiply by impact in the millions of families. You start to create new norms and really make it tough. It's like an upstream or an uphill battle for many families to remain together and intact, to pursue education. We know for a fact that if a child, regardless of how meager their start is, graduates from high school, goes to college, lands a job, and then starts a family, they will quite predictably join the middle class in America. Like that still works. But in some of our communities that have experienced disinvestment and disconnection from opportunity and investment and support, you see those four events become so nearly impossible for so many of our children. The odds are like climbing up an escalator in the wrong direction for 12 or 20 years, however long it takes to accomplish that for the average boy, particularly for a Black boy who seem to have the worst odds against them when it comes to the amount of times they are disciplined, expelled, arrested, incarcerated, charged with the maximum possible penalty compared to any of their peers, female, white male, or others. And so there's a track record of things that we've done that have been unjust as a country. Now, America is still a great place. I never want people to confuse. It's kind of like the first time you figure out your parents aren't perfect. Like you still love them. They're still amazing. You still think they're awesome. You give your life for them. But they're not perfect in every way. You know, mom may have issues, right? So this idea is to say like, hey, we have failed in some ways. How do we strengthen? So everything we do today commits to a two-parent household, a two-generation strategy. We want to see two-parent households and support that. We believe the way to do that is to create intact communities where families can live in place, prosper in place. And so we're not going to determine the makeup of the family, but we're going to make it easier. For people to be able to prosper together and do that for a generation or two with the hopes that upstream we have solved this problem by preventing these realities for future generations. So we don't address it like many do to mediate the immediate situation, although we do a lot of things to employ and educate and prosper. But we're trying to solve this for generations to come is the whole idea.
Thanks, Eddy. That is so great. I know we're starting to run a little short on time. One of the
You're letting me give you long answers, man. I'm so sorry.
I mean, you're bringing it, so I appreciate it. I know our audience will appreciate it also. I just have a couple of remaining questions. I see that Lyft and your board and your whole community, you're trying to provide hope and help. And that's one of the things that this channel really advocates for families. So can you just tell us briefly how Lyft provides hope and help to families in these maybe disadvantaged neighborhoods?
So the year we started, we had almost 100% turnover in our third grade classroom in the neighborhood. So it didn't matter how hard the teachers and principal were trying, the obstacles holding children back were outside the school walls. Today, we have families who not only have their children going stably year over year to that same elementary school, but live across the street in beautiful award-winning housing, work around the corner for higher than average wages for that job with wonderful benefits and stability, even during something like the pandemic this year. The opportunities for small businesses, the access to employment, the number of jobs created right in the neighborhood are really meant to create for families a sense that I can, as one person put it, live in a better neighborhood without leaving my neighborhood. And so we are simply catching up the long overdue investments in this community for people to become contributing members of society in all the best ways we know how.
You know, you should really meet Julie Kleppels. I recently did 2 videos with her, and they were entitled From Tragedy to Triumph, and what she went through, and it was that overcoming attitude. And like you said, she put together a village. I mean, she had a special needs child, and her husband died, and her first husband divorced her, and dire circumstances, but she was such an overcomer, but she did have that support of those around her, is what you're talking about. Is so important, and I think you two would really connect.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, she started with a bank as a part-time teller, and now she's the number 2 executive in Seacoast Bank, an $8 billion national bank.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm a big believer in the American dream and the ability, if you have an opportunity and you have a chance, that you can achieve such great things. So, Eddie, I have one last question for you, which I ask every one of my interviewees on the channel. Do you have a healthy tip for our audience? Because this, after all, is the Healthy Family Law Attorney.
You know, it's so funny. This is the first one that came to mind. We discussed this question, and I can't remember when I said what I thought in advance to say, but it's the same one that comes to mind now. Is eat real food and rest. And by real food, I mean stuff that's like the way God made it, as close to what it's like out of the ground as possible. And rest. I'm learning this lesson now. I'm passionate about what I do. I believe it's an expression of my highest calling. But sometimes that kind of lofty sense of mission can be cover up for workaholism. And so we need to balance passionate work lives where we work hard and give our best with real deep rest. And that's often done best in nature, connecting with environments where you don't have to prove anything, wear any titles. We can just be the way a tree just sits there and gives us life by being itself. And so those would be my two thoughts that come to mind at this moment.
Well, I totally agree with both of those. 4 or 5 years ago, I changed completely the way I eat from what they call the SAD diet, the standard American diet of a lot of processed foods and carbohydrates, to real foods like that. And I've lost 50 pounds. And
I know you look amazing, man.
Yeah, I feel so much better too. No more inflammation and joint pain and all that. And you're right, sleep. I have a Fitbit. I track my sleep every night. I make sure I get to bed at the same time every night. Try to get up about the same time. Try to get 8 hours of sleep. I'm a bit of a workaholic, I have to admit. And so I have to really make a concerted effort to make sure I get that rest.
I'm with you, man. I hear you.
Right. I mean, it is what it is. But I'm grateful for those, because I think those types of healthy tips are really important for people. And unfortunately, families going through divorce, it is in some respects the most stressful event of their entire lives. In a sense, more stressful than the death of a family member, because at least with the death of a family member, you have a funeral, you have some finality, you grieve, and at some point you move on. A lot of times with divorce, it's the death of the marriage and a dream, but you still have to.
It feels unresolved. Yeah.
Right? You got to interact with your former spouse, and you still have children together, and you're fighting over that, and it just seems like it goes on forever. So anything that we can offer to our clients and our friends and family for healthy tips, I'm all in.
I love that.
Eddie, thank you so much for being on the channel today.
Thank you. It was my privilege. Appreciate you, Tom.
Yes. And if our audience has enjoyed this, found any value in it, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. If you'd like to receive future videos, we're coming out with a new legal topic video every Wednesday and a new interview every Friday. So hit that bell icon. And thank you so much for being here today as our audience, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.